These are the times that try men's souls, try women's souls, try everybody's souls. And, like it's hard for me, like, and I've been I've been preparing for this kind of thing, like, for a long time. Um, but, but it's still hard. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's like in life, a lot of people, I guess, they choose a kind of career and a kind of path, maybe a kind of scene and a personality and all these things. And there's, infinite variety that people choose and that you can choose, um, and that I could have chosen, like I grew up like just, Californian, middle class Californian. I could have gone any number of directions, right? Um, and people all around me went every number of directions. But I'd basically been a revolutionary, you know. Really, I feel since birth. I mean, since like pretty early. Like even um like definitely as a kid, like in school, um I was opposed to like tyrannical authority on principle. Like I didn't know what like leftism was. I wouldn't have known those words and stuff, but I you know I would always, we I was among those students that would say, like, America is a free country, and we should be able to say what, if we got in trouble for like swearing or something, we'd say America, this is a free country. And we would just try to stand up to like the authorities trying to control us on everything. And especially the, more like sadistic, like, uh you know arrogant ones. um so like a lot of people I've known in my life saw it as that, probably, that I threw my life away, because while people all around me, you know went to quote unquote good schools and had illustrious careers or whatever, I just study history and I'm active politically. And um and because I'm so anti-establishment, I've always kind of alienated like a lot of people, just as a matter of course. So there's a lot of people who thought, like, basically, and maybe and probably still think like I've thrown my life away by choosing this path of like being a revolutionary and going against the system, basically, in a lot of what I do. Um, but I think the last like couple years confirms, like, much more than confirms, like um the validity of my focus over the years. Because I mean, that's the fact. It's like I never. It just seemed like silly to be obsessed over these little things that people are, like they're focused so much on their career or this or that, when that's all control. Like there's powers larger than that that can just control that and flick it away in a moment. And like that's what happened, like all these people that did the right thing and, quote unquote, like, and were like entrepreneurs and started their own business. And that's great. Like if they had a good business that was good, served the community, right on. But at the end of the day, like a lot of those businesses got completely destroyed by the lockdowns and now they don't exist anymore. And people who worked like, I mean, there's like a pub that was open for like 1,000 years or something, and it's closed because of these lockdowns. And that was in England. But same thing happened across the US, like all these places. And so, whereas what I've invested myself in, um, well, I mean, at least it's helped keep me on my toes through this time, because uh, all my life I've just been like distrustful of authorities and studying and the history. And my dad my dad told me taught me when I was pretty young, history of like government like experiments on people and stuff, and like the fucked up stuff they've done, like just spraying like chemicals on people and stuff, and Tuskegee experiments and stuff. And so like, I mean, it's hard to know like where are things going to go and what can we really do, like of course they can, just, I guess, probably just zap me anytime they want to or whatever. But at least in theory, like the knowledge and this, and um yeah, I mean, yeah, the knowledge and maybe some of the habits of mind that I've built up as being a revolutionary over the last 40 years, basically, 41 years, like, um might, put me in good stead, might be useful, and might end up being, you know uh yeah, well worth the choice. Because yeah, it's like I figured like I'm not gonna focus on some little shit playing inside the game when they're controlling the game. That's what I'm interested in. I know a lot of people are just fatalist about it, and they've always there's always people who are just like, well, that's how it is. You got to play the game. But I just wasn't interested in that, and so yeah, I mean, who knows like what are our chances, what's gonna happen, what are they gonna do. But like for one thing, I studied the history of revolution, of populist activism and uprisings throughout much of history, primarily in the Anglosphere, like because I was studying the Scots and and the Ulster Scots, in including in America and elsewhere. And so and ultimately a lot of it ended up being about the American Revolution and about Jeffersonian politics and Jacksonian politics. And it's like these people were very flawed, like obviously like Jefferson, Jackson, both slave owners, both did reprehensible things. But but to understand like um I don't know, to understand history, you have to understand like what they stood for, what they ran on, and what they represented really at their time in their time. uh, and I think there are a lot of tools for us now, like taking on these like transhumanists or whatever, like um, the same the same stories of like, and the same principles of our forefathers, our forebears, that I think still will serve us, like, because it's all been forgotten so much. Like the radicalism of history has so much been swept under the rug because it's doesn't fit with the powers that be prefer to just have, like, the American Revolution. They wanted us to remember it as just some kind of you know cheesy idea, but not anything much to it. And I don't know, like some Hamilton play full of like historical revisionism that still ultimately feeds into their aristocratic like sensibilities. um I mean, like, the American Revolution uh had a radical element from day one. And there were different elements in it, and they were fiercely competitive with each other, like the Federalists and the I mean, during the Revolution there wasn't yet the Federalists. There was like the the party that was um I mean, there was probably a bunch of different parties in the during the Revolution, but by state, like in um a lot of things during the Revolution was it under that form of government, under the Continental Congress. There wasn't that much federal authority. um I mean, a lot of things were just done locally by state if they weren't involving the army. And so, and the states, it fell to the states to try to craft like revolutionary constitutions. And sometimes they had to create new constitutions to basically do away with the colonial charters, because the colonial charters were inherently royalists. Um, and so, like in Pennsylvania in 1776, um, they created their constitution. The revolutionaries did, and it was kind of the birth of the modern left, you could say. Um, it was the most democratic constitution. It gave the vote to all taxpayers, so or all tax-paying men. So that was most people, or I guess it was everybody that at least owned land. So it may have still excluded some, like uh, the indentured servants and stuff like that, but it was far more democratic than like any other constitution, really. Um, I think the closest besides that was New Hampshire, which I think created its new constitution just prior to that of Pennsylvania. Um, and then Georgia followed with a constitution largely along the same lines as Pennsylvania's, very democratic, much more democratic in many ways than, our federal constitution that we have. The federal constitution was created to explicitly as a counter to these, radical state constitutions. It was intended to be more like British and conservative. But yeah, like then Vermont came in explicitly based on the with a constitution explicitly based on that of Pennsylvania, um, and what became Tennessee was like a breakaway group trying to they were first trying to call it Franklin, I think Frankland or Franklin, or I think there was two groups. One was called wanted to call it Frankland, and that was like my family, basically the Campbells and some other people, and they like the Ulster Scots, and they wanted to have the Pennsylvania type of constitution, um, very radical, very democratic, and but then the Franklin Franklinites won out. They were the people from North Carolina and I think Episcopalians or something. Anyway, so they that kind of fizzled out, and but yeah, like what other states? I mean, throughout like the people sometimes dismiss the revolution as if it was just like a change of guard, a change of like some kind of palace coup or something, just changed the location of the seat of government or whatever. But um, like the changes that happened I mean, there was radicalism in America before the Constitution, certainly. And in some ways, America was the most radical. The British colonies were the most radical at their inception because a lot of them had like full manhood suffrage, like all men could vote. Um, and that wouldn't be seen again until like mostly like till the 1800s. Um, and but yeah, as time went on, somehow in the 1600s, they added all these new qualifications, property qualifications, etc. Um, but I mean, often when they're starting a colony, they're basically offering all the goods to whoever's like crazy enough to like undertake it for them. So they offer a lot of free land and stuff. I mean, that's a lot of how America was settled was they, the people who claimed dominion over this or that part of it, they wanted people to come, you know, settle it and I don't know, Britishize it or something. And so they would offer basically, and partly to, for reasons back in Britain as well, to give refuge to certain groups or whatever. But they would basically offer free land. Like a lot of the people who came to America, like in the 1600s and 1700s, received either, uh, I mean, some of them received free land, and a lot of them received like land that was virtually free, especially by the European standards. So, and then as time wore on, it got more expensive and everything. But then there would be like recurring homestead acts and like homesteader movements and squatters' rights movements. And, you know, I mean, this is in a way the time in history where there's the least of any kind of movement for for housing and land for the landless and homeless, even though it's obviously much more needed than it's even ever been. Um, but yeah, hopefully, I mean, all these things need to be revived. Like all the tenets of like liberty of American, what they used to call Whig principles, Whiggery. Um, it's all like